If you pull up a map right now on your phone, there's this like built-in assumption of permanence.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
basically geometry. You see these solid color-coded blocks, sharp black lines separating countries, and we just accept it. Inside that line is us. Outside that line is them.
It is deeply comforting, honestly. I mean, we like our identity to be safely boxed in by geography.
Yeah,
You cross a physical border, you are in a new state. The dirt beneath your feet dictates who is in charge.
exactly.
Yeah.
But today, for this deep dive, we are taking that map, crumbling it up, and throwing it completely out the window.
Oh, totally.
We are heading into the ancient Near East, specifically Mesopotamia in the early second millennium. And what you find there is a political landscape that is going to completely break your modern understanding of what a state actually is.
It really is.
Because in this world, well, the map isn't based on dirt. It's based on people.
It's a total paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And to explore this, we're looking at the research of Daniel E. Flaying, particularly his work, Democracy's Ancient Ancestors.
Such a good book.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. We're zeroing in on the chapters covering the archaic state and the motum, which roughly translates to the land. And our mission today is highly unusual because we are leaving absolutely nothing out.
Nothing.
Every fact, scholar, tablet reference, and quote from the source material, we are unpacking it all.
Right. So to set the stage for you, imagine the region around Mori in that early second millennium. You've got these ancient cities, sure, but the real power, like the absolute dominant force in the region, belonged to these massive tribal groups.
Right, the Binu Yamina and the Benu Simal.
Yes, and in this society, tribe took absolute precedence over towns in these large polities called motums.
That's the core of it, tribe over geography.
It's like this permanent emergency contact list that transcends geography. There's this brilliant quote from Philip Carl Salzman from his year 2000 publication on page 231 regarding his Belushi friend's reaction to North American society.
Oh, I love this part.
He writes, the standard follow-up was, what do you do if you get into trouble? Who do you go to?
Which just exposes a massive blind spot that plagued modern academia for generations.
Yeah, big time.
Because Akkadian terminology for complex polities, these archaic states, was defined by the territorial population, the Medum, and it entirely ignored what generations of modern scholars obsessively pursued as urbanism.
I mean, scholars really tied themselves in knots. Let's just like rapid fire run through this massive list of modern theorists who tried and often completely failed to categorize these societies.
Let's do it.
So first you have V. Gordon Child's totally outdated urban revolution theory, going from savagery to barbarism.
Right, and then Anthony Giddens. In 1981, on page 145, he claimed cities are crucibles of power. And later in 1984, on pages 195 to 196, he calls it a power container, noting the state represents a new structural principle counter to the old.
Yeah, and Giddens also notes on page 287 that chiefdoms are just hard to identify.
Exactly. Then there's Elman Service in 1975. On pages 7 to 8, he replaces the urban revolution with the institutionalization of centralized leadership.
Right, and he defines the state on page 14 by institutionalized power-threatening force.
While a chiefdom, according to Service on pages 15 and 16, lacks this formal, forceful repression, he says on pages 72 to 74, it originates when a big man makes his role an office passed to sons for like sporadic group projects, which he mentions on page 94.
And then Giorgio Bucciolati in 1977, page 20, argued for a state revolution over an urban one.
Which brings us to Michael Mann in 1986.
Oh, I have the exact quote from Mann, page 37. He says, the state is a differentiated set of institutions and personnel embodying centrality, in the sense that political relations radiate outward to cover a territorially demarcated area, over which it claims a monopoly of binding and permanent rulemaking, backed up by physical violence.
And Richard Tapper is super similar. In 1990, on page 50, he gives this verbatim definition: a territorially bounded polity with a centralized government and a monopoly of legitimate force, usually including within its bounds different social classes and ethnic cultural groups.
It's also rigid. Like Timothy Earle on Chiefdoms in 1991, page 1, calling it a polity that organizes centrally a regional population in the thousands.
Yeah, Earle's defending typology's hard. In 1987, page 280, he said, an evolutionary typology appears necessary to control for cross-cultural comparisons, and the type chiefdom is useful to define societies of generally similar scale and organization.
But then you finally get pushback. Gilstein in 1994, the A publication, pages 12 to 13, he says, By counterposing chiefdoms and states as discrete categories, archaeologists have tended perhaps to overestimate the degree of centralization and power of the latter.
Stein was spot on. He also notes in his 1994 B paper, pages 10 to 11, that segmentary states lose control with distance.
And Olivier de Montmollin in 1989, page 86, analyzing the Maya. He rejects typologies and the assumption that only locationally efficient arrangements are possible.
Right, or Gregory Possehl in 1998 labeling the massive writingless Harappan civilization as a non-state.
It's wild. And then Gary Feynman in 1998, pages 97 to 98, points out that demographic thresholds for states vary wildly, like 2,000 to 3,000 in Europe versus 100,000 in Hawaii.
Yeah, Feynman argues we must move away from taxonomies. On pages 100 to 101, he says we should direct our thinking away from the simple taxonomic dichotomies that have been drawn between weak or segmental states and bureaucracies, and toward more continuous models that recognize pre-industrial organizations as dynamic formations that may oscillate in scale, integration, and complexity.
By looking at, quote, to larger landscapes in which clusters of such entities interact.
Exactly, what he calls state systems or peer polity networks. And he notes on page 104 that small states have classes, slaves, palaces, dense populations, writing, markets, and 3+ decision-making levels.
Okay, so that's all the modern theory. But the reality of the ancient town completely counters this.
Completely. Robert Adams warns about this in 1988, pages 27 to 28. He says you can't overgeneralize from settlement hierarchies, where just because you have 3 or 4 tiers, it supposedly equals a state.
Right, because Adams in 1981, page 136, and Oates in 1983, page 81, show that the Sumerian word Iru and the Akkadian word Alum literally just meant town. They weren't tied to size or urban institutions at all.
We have the receipts for this. A law texts show towns averaging 25 houses.
Wait, 25 houses?
Yes, and some as small as 3 houses, according to Liverani in 1983, pages 160 to 161, and 1975, page 153.
3 houses? That's a cul-de-sac.
I know, right? And a Carchemish tablet under the Neo-Assyrian Empire shows a town with just 16 household heads. That's Fales 1990, page 100, and Vandemeerop 1999, page 10.
And Hidat uses Haparash for all settlements, big or small, from Alorishin 1971, page 58.
Exactly.
So if cities didn't equal states, what did? This brings up Ann Porter and Thomas McClellan's excavation of Banat, this massive 3rd millennium site founded by pastoralists.
The Bennett site is so crucial to this.
It is. Porter says in 2002, page 28, there is no evidence that the population required to sustain a settlement of this size and type with its heavy investment in monumental architecture and its extensive industrial sector was ever permanently settled in the area. Rather, like other cities in northern Mesopotamia at this time, Banat was an administrative ceremonial manufacturing center catering to a largely untraceable public.
An untraceable public. Just wow.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're moving from the town to the macro level, the medum.
Right, so the madam was the primary political unit. It is the people representing a decision-making entity with its own voice, and importantly, it required no king.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, though if it was ruled by a sharam, meaning a king or chief, they made no distinction between the two, then it was a kingdom. But Malayalam language was never used for single-city corporately governed polities.
Right, even though cities like Tutul and Imar exercised independence while submitting to Mari and Yamhad.
Exactly. So from the outside, the madam is looked at as a single diplomatic bloc.
Like tracking clothes from, quote, this land in Aram X 173, line 16. I actually have the verbatim quote from an Urdinona and Imidigan messenger to the ruler of Underig.
Go for it.
Except for Zimrilim and the town of Mari, Etamram, and the town of Underig, no other king in town is my enemy. Zimrilim and the Babylonian, with which king have they not entered alliance, and with which land, Modum, have they not touched the chin?
Touch the chin. That's such a great diplomatic phrase. And Atamrim refers to Matmari defensively, too. The quote is, the enemy has made raids in my land, so I myself shall instantly travel 40 double hours overland. I can even go out of my way as far as the land of Mari. No, this is not how I will take care of the land.
It's all about the land.
Amen.
Also, a Mari official literally offers Gesera, the queen mother of Yamhad, a town, quote, in Mari.
Right, because internally, the Modum is the agricultural countryside. Outside the fortified towns, the Donatum.
We have so many receipts for this, like ARM 224+, where Zimrilim's servant writes to Hammurabi and asks, will you besiege city or raid countryside?
Yes. Or Yasimel to Zimrilim regarding the midst of the land, the Libimatim.
I have that quote. When Ijamadigan went out into the countryside, Libimatim, he laid siege to the town of Atmu. He set up an assault tower and began piling up earthworks. Because of this news, Oscar Adu has delayed going to my lord, saying, "The enemy is right next to my land. I am afraid that when I myself go to my father, the enemy will find out and violate my countryside, Lubi Matia. Until my father makes a foray into the countryside, I can go nowhere."
The panic is so real. And Lassu and Jacobson note that the land of Ushara literally means countryside in the Shamshura texts.
Yeah, and Zunan takes omens during Semsiadu's reign. The quote is, "Zunan took omens regarding the well-being of both countryside and fortified town."
In Batum also reassures the king, saying, "The land of Yamatbal is your land, and Andarig is your city."
The texts are just obsessed with tracking barley in these lands. There's a quote, "In the countryside, the Hana are taking their fill of barley." And another one, "Hammurabi of Babylon has invaded the land of Ajuna, and he has burnt its barley. He has harassed the land and brought back its loot."
Which makes sense because the Madam is level terrain, specifically contrasted with the rugged Adum, the mountains.
Right.
But it's not just agriculture. I want to connect this to Ann Porter's 2000 analysis, pages 242 to 246 and 255 of Ebla writes in Arakel.
Oh, the rituals.
Yes. The king and queen actually leave the city to sit on the thrones of their fathers at Ninah or Binash. They make offerings to dead kings at the house of the land, the Emadim or Tim.
And that's a funerary structure, right? Not a temple.
Exactly. Porter argues on pages 260 to 261 that the dialectics of Ebla express power individual versus community and location, meaning city versus surroundings.
Because the voice of the Madam mattered. Madam had feelings. Texts literally ask if it's troubled or calm. It speaks.
Yeah, it does.
Like the quote, "When all the land of Zelmakum sees what becomes of him, they will say."
Or when Ishme-Dog speaks to his Madam, and it literally answers him.
And the Madam pressures Kurda's king to be a brother to Zimrilim, not a vassal. Yeshunana ratifies Silisin with the phrase, "May he take charge of our land."
Don't forget Inabjari, Zimrilim's daughter. She married Ibaladu of Ashaka, who speaks of her throne and her land.
Okay, so this brings up a huge question. What is the distinction between what a king rules and the Madam itself?
So this is where we introduce the West Semitic term Namlakatum, which means dominions, derived from Malcolm, meaning king.
Okay, let's hear the receipts on that.
Samsiadu dedicates a throne to Itermer. He says, the land bottom of Mari, the banks of the Euphrates, and his, Itermer's or Mari's dominions.
He separates them.
Yes, and later he says, "At the time Itermer heard my prayer and my petition, and granted me fully the land of Mari, the banks of the Euphrates, Paratum, and his dominions, Namakatum."
Darishilibur, quoting Yoren Lim of Yamhad, says, "From now on, whether this year, next year, or 10 years from now, if these men enter my land, Matum, or my dominions, Namakatum, again, I will arrest them and have them brought to Zimrilim."
Ibaladu of Ashlaka writes about vassal towns, like his town of Nahur and like the other towns of his dominions, Namlakatum. The town of Burundu is Zimrilim's town, and Adalshani is his son.
And Yawiel of Talhayim mentions Namlakat Belaya with Ashalaka and Karhum, or Kirdahat. Duran translates it as Royom, while Sharpin notes an unpublished text uses the singular.
There is also the Tel Leilin oath, which reads, "The king, Sharam of the land, Mortum of Apum, his sons, his servants, his army, Sabum, his pastoralists, Nawum, and his dominions, Namlakatum."
So the rulers claimed divine right. They referred to Mad Hammurabi, Mad Zimrilim, Mad Atamrim. The storm god Adu gives the land.
Yeah, Abiya, the prophet or Apalum of Adu, says, "Thus says Adu, I gave all the land to Yadunlim, and by means of my weapons he had no rival. He abandoned me, however, and I then gave the land which I had given him to Samsiadu."
And Yarim Lim says the storm god has his own madam. So how did they actually name these places? I'm looking at Table 3 versus Table 4.
Right, let's bring down the data.
Table 3 shows madams named for capitals. Ikalatim, Bublim, Inuna, Larsa, Katanim, Halab from the Sinteri letter, Andarig, and Kurda.
But Table 4 shows madams defined by population. You have Yamhad with its capital at Halab, or Aleppo, which is the Amorite equivalent Dadmum.
Then Apim with its capital Wubad Enlil, or Ena, seen on the seals of Mutia and Yakunashar.
And Yamut Balim with its capital Underig, ARM 28th 172 lines, 8 prime to 9 prime mentions, guarding town Underig and keeping land Yamut Balim safe.
Plus Numha or Numahim with capital Kurda, and Yapturim with capital Tahayom. These tribal names are fascinating. Yamadbal and Nunha use those Semitic Yap prefixes.
Exactly. Yadunlim's Amashanan temple inscription lists Yemenite states. Amnanum, Rabum, Uprapum, and Ishmedagan mentions Yerua.
We have this 8.3960 quote that shows how scary this was to them. All the Ammonites are on the roan, having left their towns and their land, threatening Emar and Tutul.
Imagine the whole state just walking away. Samsiadu and Hammurabi remember links to Numha, Umnanu, Yahuru, but they don't use the titles.
But the Larsa kings, Waradsin and Kudur-Mabuk, used father of the Mutbal Amaret, even though Rimsin dropped it.
And Uruk kings Singamel and Sinkashid used king of the Amnanom.
Yadimlim used Mathana. Samsiadu used the land between the Tigris and the Euphrates.
While Yazma-Adu used Matmar At, or Puritim, and Zimmerlim restored king of Mari and the land of the Hana.
So how does this contrast with their Sumerian ancestry?
It's a big shift. The Akkadian modem contrasts heavily with Sumerian concepts. In Sumerian, you had Kalam, meaning our land or the Sumerian Low Country, which was a synonym with Oga, meaning people.
Right.
And that contrasted with Kur, meaning their land or the mountains. By early dynastic III, Kalam and Ki-Engi meant all of southern Mesopotamia.
With Enlil as the head of the pantheon at Nippur.
Exactly. Lugal-Zagesi of Uma's Vase claims Lugal-Kalamak, meaning king of the land.
And the Fora, or Suapak texts, list workers from Uruk, Adab, Nippur, Lagash, Surupak Uma as Kengir, omitting Erdu, and Larsa.
And Matena of Lagash links Enlil to Nippur. Jacobson and Postgate theorize a Nippur League, and Salaberger and Klein place Old Kengir at Uruk.
But the coolest part is that Akkadian actually lent Matam back to Sumerian as Ma.de. Like in Arthur and Ison, you see Shama.de. Bilingual inscriptions translated King of Sumer and Akkad to King of the Land of Sumer and Akkad.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at Table 5 and 6.
The coalitions.
Yes, there were 3 medams that were coalitions with plural kings, Zalmakum, Idamaras, and Shubartum. All of these appear in Zimmerlim's reign.
Right. Zalmakum included Haran, Neriya, Uda, and Hansat. Karchemish's king sent messengers to Yamhad, Katna, and Matzalmek.
And Amutpiel of Katna wrote to Zimrilim about Yaramlim of Aleppo making peace with the kings of Zalmakum.
We have a Zalmakum leadership quote for that. We must go. We want to send our kings or our Sugogu to negotiate with you.
Multiple kings negotiating as one land. Then there's Idamaras, which was the Similite grazing lands. FMV F6 notes the bond between Hana and Idamaras.
Ibaladu of Alaka writes, "When I made peace with Idamaras," and claims he can lead them and the upper land against the Elamites.
Zimrilim actually named 2 years for victories over Alaka, and Ibaladu accused Ibram of Susa of claiming sole kingship.
And there's this A1098 quote regarding Yadunlim. Previously, when Yadunlim would go to that land, he would present gifts to the fathers of Idamaras.
Samsa'adu, on the other hand, didn't recognize them, placing his seat Ubat Enlil at Hena.
But later kings, Samsu-Luna and Ammisaduqa, the quote-unquote sons of Numha in Mutbal Idamaras, did recognize them.
As did an Enuna treaty that lists the Akkadians, the Yamutbal, the Numha, and Idamaras.
The third coalition was Hubartum, or Subartu. Pierre Steinkeller argues for 2 meanings. Broad, meaning Upper Tigris to Bali and Hubber, versus narrow, meaning east of Tigris, the Hurrian-speaking Ubaru.
While Michael Guichard in FMV7 argues it means the entire Habur and Bali, as Zimrilim provisioned kings of Hubartum, Idamaras, Zalmakum, and Adamu. The Abla and Badar texts suggest the mid-3rd millennium was Semitic-speaking.
The movement of these groups is just incredible. ARMV 24 tracks the Turuku moving from Hirbazanum to Tiganano.
Ishmael Dagan updates his brother about it, and Samsi-Adu tells Yazma-Adu about the Rabu tribe.
The quote is, "The Rabu tribe, who reside in the land of Yamhad, have written to me as follows. We have set our face to cross the river, but there are no boats for the crossing."
And this wasn't just Mesopotamia. The Hittites, with their capital at Hattusha, adopted this too.
Yeah, New Hittite uses the Akkadogram HLSU for district. Middle Hittite uses KURE equals Utna for land, Telepori for district, and URU Ashi equals Haparash for town or Sumerian URU.
While Jimra or Gemara is non-city, SRU is steppe, and here Sag is mountains.
Foreign lands are Kur Urumizri for Egypt, Kur URU of the Kasha tribes, and kings of the land of Nuhashe.
And we can't forget the ultimate Labarna quote.
Oh, I've got it right here. "The land belongs to the storm god. Heaven and earth and the people belong to the storm god. He has made the Labarna the king, his regent. To him he has given all the land of Hatti. Let the Labarna govern the entire land with his hand.
It's all about governing the land. So how did they subdivide these huge realms?
The Wholesome, the district.
Yes, large matums subdivided into Wholesomes governed by a chapitum. Pierre Viard and Brigitte Lyon charted this beautifully in 2001.
Zimri Lim's core included Mari, Turka, and Sagaratam. The outer districts were Katunan on the Habur and Suhum on the Euphrates downstream, which features letters to Meptum.
And the governors, the Halas, you have Yantakum, Sintiri, Asheronum at Apquum, Yanusamar at Sanduatam, Ikarapashu, and Habdumadagan.
Kibradaging of Turka actually says, I am not negligent toward my district and the needs of the palace.
And Teremshakim just reports the district as well.
Badi Lim tells his Sagaratam colleague, gather your Halsam into fortified towns.
Because the population mostly lived in Copperton, the Katunan governor actually feared district displacement, called Nasahum.
Geography and direction were key. Turka was the upper district, the Halsam Alum.
Samsi Adu's plural upper districts learned of the Autumn Nurgle festival. The upper country, or Maidum Elitum, referred to Zalmakum, or the route of the Elamite invasion under Hammurabi.
Or where Ibalpiel, the Simelite chief of pasture, or Merhum, confronted the man of Ishnuna in Idamaras, or Hubartum, or the Zagros in the Shamshura texts.
And the lower land meant Mari to Ilansura, or Larsa to Ishmidagan. The lower district was Suhum.
And look at Table 7. The wholesome activities are non-stop.
It was a ton of work.
You have a census in Aram 470 and Axis 725, taxes enclosed in Aram 370 and sheep in Aram 2737.
Ilkum service in Aram 27107, general labor or epishum in Aram 2726.
Reports in Aram 2728, fighting locusts in Aram 2728.
Grain logistics in Aram 281, plows in Aram 34 and 37, and boat builders in Aram 26, think 70. Under Samsi Adu, Yazma Adu actually ruled Mari as a district. Ishmidagan literally references the troop of the Mari district.
And there were subordinate Wholesomes too. And the Yuna diplomatic report says, in the land of Yununa, there are uninhabited districts, Holosun Adutum. When he, Hammurabi of Babylon, sends to the land of Yununa, his rapid couriers cross over to the ruler of Elam, where the districts are uninhabited.
This was addressed to vassals like Numha, Yamutbal, Dare of the Bali, Karana, Nahor, Andarig, and Talhayum.
Kabi Kahat writes about the flocks of the tent dwellers that graze in my Wholesome. The ruler of Ka Aniska calls his realm the Wholesome of my lord.
And Zimri Lim tells Hatnurabi of Tarana or Katara, I will tear out the claw that Yishunonaite from the midst of my Wholesome, and I will deal with him so that he will never again come up to my Wholesome.
So how did town leaders fit into these lands? Sagaratam districts addressed the Sugagu, Laputu, and elders.
We have an Aymar quote about this. 80 Immorate heads of the land are going to the river god for immersion because of the silver of the goddess Baal Tamatium.
80. Zimri Lim had 200 heads of my maidum, 100 Hana, 100 Puratum.
Samsi Adu had heads of the land, and Idamaras had elders.
Just to wrap up the terms, there are two last terms that are not political, right?
Correct. Nishu, which are dependents on a patriarchal family head, and Mushenim, which is the population not directly dependent on palace income.
Wow. So
Yeah.
what does this all mean? We've just dumped an entire archive of ancient Mesopotamian political theory.
I mean, it means the ancient political map wasn't just lines drawn by kings and cities. It was a fluid, breathing network of people, tribes, and lands operating collectively.
It's incredible.
It is. And it leaves us with something really profound to mull over. If early humans organized their most complex, large-scale societies based on the flexible identity of the people, the Maidum and the tribe, rather than static borders and urban centers,
Yeah.
are modern rigid nation-states actually the historical anomaly? What could we learn about solving today's geopolitical border crises by looking at a system where the state was an identity you carried with you rather than a line you couldn't cross?
That is such a wild thought to leave off on. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
My pleasure.